Hello, YouTube. This subject, of course, is fascinating, but I cannot say that it's a very safe topic. But my information that I'm about to tell you comes from open sources, and there's not that many, but a very interesting hypothesis which I want to share with you. How it is in reality, well, you decide. 700 years ago, after their dissolution, the Knights Templars, they still fascinate people. The Templars were among the most wealthy and powerful of the Western Christian military orders. In their distinctive white mantles with a red cross, the Templar Knights were among the crack fighting units of the Crusades. The organization existed for nearly 2 centuries, during the Middle Ages, roughly the same 200 years that the Crusaders held land in the Middle East. After the defeat of the Templar Order at the beginning of the 14th century, the monarchs of Europe and the Pope eluded the sums of 1.5 million livres, which disappeared in an unknown direction. The Templar Order, which in Europe was the richest of all states, was officially banned on October 13, 1307, by order of King Philip IV of France, also called the Handsome. But it hasn't completely disappeared, that treasure. Historians find traces of it in Russia, and someone assures that Moscow became the capital thanks to the gold of the Templars. Is this really the case? Well, in 1917, the famous anarchist theorist Apollon Andreevich Karelin returned to Russia from abroad. During his tour abroad in France, he was initiated and was accepted into the order, and came back with a specific purpose or mission: to form the Eastern detachment of the Templars. He managed to carry out his plans together with Andrei Bely in 1920. Many artists, mathematicians, scientists, art historians, writers, and other representatives of the creative intelligentsia of Russia became the Knights. At that time, the Templar Order included several preparatory orders: Order of Light, Order of the Spirit, Temple of Arts. In order to move from one to another, higher in status, the knights needed to tell several legends and pronounce a secret formula. Meetings were held regularly at which the Templars listened to lectures on cosmology and philosophy, stories about chivalry, the spirit world, Atlantis, the infinity of universes, and spiritual principles of man. But the knights, despite the fact that many of them held anarchist views, they tried to avoid politics. However, the OGPU, this is the KGB of the time, Soviet secret police, was sure that the Russian Templars were interested not only in education issues. As a result, the knights were arrested and crushed in 1930. Let's look more at the Russian footprint. Given the fact that the Templar ideas have proved popular on Russian soil, there is an opinion that gold should be looked for in Russia. Allegedly, on the eve of the wave of arrests, the Templar valuables were prudently taken from Paris to the port of La Rochelle, where they were loaded onto 8 galleys that sailed to an unknown destination. A little later, Yuri Danilovich Moskovsky, a Russian statesman, in the city of Novgorod, met overseas travelers who arrived on the same number of ships. They brought a myriad of gold, treasury, pearls, and precious stones, which, however, has not yet been documented. The gold of the Templars could become the starting capital for which the Uspensky Cathedral in Vladimir was built. But again, there is no reliable information about this, not in the open sources. So what were the treasures of the Templars? Many sources provide reliable information that a few hours before the storming of the main residence of the order, several wagons left the Paris temple on which the treasures of the very first bank holding company in Europe and Asia Minor were allegedly transported to an unknown destination. This is usually written by those who are not well versed in the medieval coin system, since the amount of the missing treasures is equivalent to 12,405 kilograms of gold, or also 733.5 tons of silver. At that time, the construction of a huge royal castle cost 45,000 livres, and the annual budget of such a strong medieval country as France consisted of 300,000 to 400,000 livres. As we said, the treasures of the Templars have not yet been found. Again, there is a hypothesis that Moscow became the capital of Russia based on the gold of the Templars. There's also a hypothesis that the rise of Moscow was due to the wealth of the Templars. Proponents of alternative history in Russia suggest that Moscow has long been a stronghold for the Templars. Judging by the surviving chronicles from the year 1305 to 1314, people arrived in the Russian city on horseback in full armor, who could well have been Templars who escaped from the Inquisition and the French king. There may also be the Holy Grail in Moscow, a sacred relic that disappeared with the disappearance of the order. According to some historians, it should be searched for in the dungeons between St. Basil's Cathedral and the Kremlin. By the way, I've done a lot of videos about underground Moscow and its secrets. You take a look at them. You'll find them in my channel. Just do the search. Of course, not everyone agrees with this either. But then how can we explain the presence of the Templar symbols in the 8 pointed stars on the same cathedral, on crosses and roses of old cemetery grills, in the stucco ornaments of Stalin skyscrapers? And there is no doubt that several influential Russian noble families had Templars as their ancestors. At least no doubt to some researchers. Those were Shukins, Nazimovs, Nesterov, Suvorovs, the nobility of Russia. So the theory of the rise of Moscow at the expense of the Templars apparently is not without meaning, but there is more. And in Eastern Europe. So the money suddenly disappeared for everyone, as well as almost 70 knights, whom the whole of Europe could not find for several years. At the same time, a few years after the expulsion of the last Templars from Europe, a new state begins to grow by leaps and bounds in the territory lost between huge forests and swamps. And I tell you about those forests. You can find more in my videos about Belarus and its strange cryptids. There are armored troops, talented military leaders, stone castles and fortresses, developed trade and crafts. It begins to act as a real counterweight in these lands to the great horde with the vassals in Zalesia and its allies in Galicia and Russia. The great horde, or Uluk Orda, was a rump state of the Golden Horde that existed from the mid-15th century to 1502. Anyway, what was that new state I mentioned before? This is the Grand Duchy of Lithuania, created on the lands of the present Grodno region, which in some 50 years in the 14th century turned from a small forest principality into the largest state in Europe. And there's every chance to assume that the stone tower erected near Beloveska Pusha is directly related to this. Beloveska Pusha National Park is a national park within the parts of the Brest region and Grodno region in Belarus, adjacent to the Polish border. The Bela Veja is part of a typical order castle. The Tower of Kamenetstvo, called the White Tower, Bela Veja, the main landmark of the town of Kamenets in Belarus. Its color, which has been brick red through the ages, never white, so the name does not associate with it. The first record in the chronicles about the foundation of the tower dates from 1276, erected between 1271 and 1289, and it is the only such tower remaining to this day in Belarus. Today it is a National Historic Site. A dubious place in the chronicle, which tells that the Volhynian prince built the stone tower in Kamenets, is rather inscribed much later, when compiling the next list with changes. It is not the prince who built it. The Volhynian prince did not have the opportunity to build a huge stone tower from the most modern material at that time, with a wall thickness of up to 2 meters. Look at it. I'm attaching photos. And there was no need. There was a relict forest, pine and oak around. Who's going to go there, really? It is customary to date the time of the construction to the the years 1270s. In the 12th century, when fierce clashes between the Volhynian troops and local Yatvyaks, malicious, distrustful, and belligerent people, unfolded in these places. The Yatvyaks is one of the oldest tribal groups of the southeastern Baltic states, first mentioned in the 2nd century AD by Claudius Ptolemy. The Yatvyaks ceased to exist as an object of international relations, and its lands were divided between neighboring state entities. The castle began to be built from the main tower using modern technologies. Moreover, think about this. In those years, once every 6 months, as scheduled, a horde of warlord Nogai joyfully passed through the local territory, taking involuntary contribution, girls, and so forth. The Nogai would never have allowed uncoordinated defense construction, but, encountering Knight Templar face to face, that's something else. The Wendish masonry, namely, it was used in the construction of the round tower, alternates with various architectural excesses that are not often found in defensive structures of that time. But the type of building itself is a typical main tower of the Order Castle. That order, the Knight Templar, which was abandoned in a wooded, impassable area for some time. And the reason was that the Templar Order, after the big problems began in the Holy Land, began to look for new territories in Europe, where members of the order could maintain their influence not only in the financial sphere, but also in the military-political sphere. That small principality, the Grand Duchy of Lithuania, which became big and arose on the basis of tribal unions, the center of which was the ancient Belarusian city of Volkovisk, on the territory of the present Grodno region, was the best fit. These lands are also being looked after for expansion by the main antagonist of the Templars in Europe and the enemy of the Russian state, the Teutonic Order. A delegation of Templars arrived at the coronation of the first ruler of the Grand Duchy of Lithuania, Mindovga, in 1253 in Novogrudok. They arrived together with the Archbishop of Riga, who represented the Pope at the coronation. The Templars easily managed to get plots of land for 3 commanderies and the Order's castle. The latter was located near the border of the lands of the allied Grand Duchy of Lithuania, of the Yatviak tribes living in Belaveska Pusha, with Galician and Polish lands. These 4 buildings were the first in the territory of the present-day Belarus built using technologies for the manufacture and firing, and the use of organic matter for mortar, which gives the structures unprecedented durability. The castle was built as an enclosed community. Like many European castles, it had a great round tower and a raised moat, enclosed by a moat and the river on the northern side, and an adjoining enclosure that was completely destroyed in 1903. This type of the moat and bailey castle appeared in the 10th and 11th centuries between the Rhine and Loire rivers, and eventually spread to most of the Western Europe and even to the area of present Belarus. We have an idea who spread it. The red brick tower with service and residential rooms on 5 levels inside was actually a donjon or a keep that was quite common in France and England till the 16th century. It is 30 meters, 98 feet high. The red brick walls are about 2.5 meters or 8.2 feet thick with a pitched roof at the top. I don't know what's in the dungeons. I do know that there was an archaeological expedition in 1903, but I think more around. This is all that I know at this point, but there are ideas that the gold of the Knight Templar is in Eastern Europe. I've heard about the Baltic states. I know some groups were looking for it years ago. Now we know it may be in Moscow in the dungeons, but of course this would be a state secret. Or Belarus, which is basically aligned with Russia. So that's my information, and this is what I wanted to let you know. It's a very interesting puzzle of history, because that's all we know about the Knight Templars, basically. We're not sure really where did they disappear to with all their treasures. I'm sure the French king was able to get something, but not the bulk of it. If you like my research, you can help me. You will see how to do it in the description to this video. Please like my videos. Please tell others about my work. Please subscribe to my channel, and thank you for your attention to my work and your support.